Hi, I'm Ian, the Dragonborn Bard, and I'm the Games Master for Dragonborn Industries, a Starfinder podcast. More specifically, Campaign 1, Orion's Hope. This recap is for Story Arc 4, Hastoki Heights, and covers episode 40 through 50. Orion's Hope and new crew member, former pirate Ida Katoro, travel back through the drift to Absalom Station, when a message of panic comes through from Linda, TJ's ex-wife. That something was wrong and that members of their species, the Hastoki, were exploding and that fear was rife and the majority who had not already tried to leave or escape their tower home were now quarantined within their Dynatech lodgings. Kaz also sends a message to his former Strix crew member, Felena, to seek the truth of her death after witnessing her alive in the vision that they just received from Desna. Back on Absalom, the crew make their way to the Lawspire complex where they meet John, a custodian Starfinder doorman well past his prime years. They also meet the current Starfinder First Seeker, the leader of the Starfinders, Luwazi Elsabo, and on presenting evidence on the mission they had taken to Kashoria, become official members of the Starfinder Society. Well, except TJ, who is a Starfinder honoree until their species becomes an established one under the Pact. TJ learns that many Hastoki have been temporarily rehomed in secret by the Starfinder Society, where Linda, his ex-wife, is in fact one of these escapees from the Dynatech Tower. The crew attempt to try and gain access to TJ's former home, Hastoki Tower 1, and once inside begin to see the horrors inflicted over the past few days in which the tower has been in lockdown. Vampiric or zombie Hastoki and the evidence of visceral gore left from the mysterious exploding Hastoki are now very clear, and the crew begin to make their way up the tower in an attempt to find Jenkins, who they have made contact with, whose last message said they were trapped within their own quarters and that Dynatech defense teams were systematically here, wiping out the Hastoki floor by floor. Something still seems very wrong, and the zombie-like drones of these Hastoki wander the corridors of this tower, hungry for flesh. Yet the sound of this purge that's supposedly happening is not heard until way further up the tower. The crew happen to run into the remains of the two Dynatech teams sent in, but with one sole survivor in Stevan, learn that the teams are a hazmat team sent in to try and find a pathogen or a potential cause for this now zombified Hastoki problem. Which in turn means that the story Jenkins has told doesn't quite add up, and the reality of the grim surroundings that the crew are becoming more and more suspicious of lead them to question the validity of Jenkins' actions. The crew manage to get up to Jenkins' apartment and find a bloated and gorged Hastoki, Jenkins, stuck in their shower unit. The apartment is a grotesque hellscape of rot and damp, where water and mold has set into mass amounts of Hastoki feed, not been eaten and left to turn bad. TJ goes to offer Jenkins a hand to unstick them from their shower unit, but Jenkins at this point has lost their mind, and their dark competitive nature with TJ causes them to attack TJ with a syringe filled with some unknown serum. Combat ensues, and Jenkins shows real signs of vampirism, being able to turn to mist and move about the block through the plumbing, but also heightened strength and abilities. Not only this, but Jenkins has managed to steal some Daith Skin neurotoxin serums from Dynatech laboratories and seemingly wanted to use them in his elaborate plan to lure Elijah Rosler in here and kill him. Most of the party avoid being hit, but Ida does in fact take a dose of this serum. Jenkins, in the end, is no match for our crew and eventually succumbs to the wounds sustained from them. The crew discover Jenkins' warped sense of competitiveness has led them down a dark road. But as TJ started to publicly advocate for Hastoki rights against Dynatech, Jenkins did things in their own warped way to outdo TJ, turning the other Hastoki and using them as a way to get the company's attention, disobeying Elijah, the vampire who originally turned them, and a sad but futile attempt to lure Elijah Rosloren into a final showdown with themselves, left Jenkins in a position that when he came face to face with TJ, felt that they needed to outdo TJ once more, or lose out on this opportunity, leading to this tragic end for themselves and many of their counterparts. As the crew begin to come to terms with Jenkins' twisted and warped sense of a self-fulfilling justice, and while TJ is live streaming the events of what is happening here, Elijah Roslurin, head of marketing for Dynatech Industries, arrives on the scene in a last-minute attempt to take part and publicly begins to make a very heartfelt plea to try and let him help the Hastoki, covering his own arse and in some ways Dynatech's during this live transmission. And once it's over, he disappears, leaving the crew to realise that the serum that Jenkins had hit Ida with begins to show signs of activating. Ida's body begins to broil and bubble as his skin expands and stretches, his body erupting faster and faster. The crew also realising that Jenkins must have been using this serum on the other Hastoki too, which would explain the previous exploding members of this species. Ida, unfortunately, even with the help of his new crew and friends, succumbs to the serum, and in a rush to get him out of the tower, dies in a gory mess, painting the very walls and ceilings with his innards. The crew don't have long at this point, as Dynatech defense teams are working their way up through the building, and once contact is made, the bloodied crew of Orion's Hope meet with Rena Constantine once more here in Hastoki Heights. They have a brief and seemingly private conversation with Rena, but one that leads to the crew believing that they can trust her when she says that her offer to let them go into floor 184 in the Dynatech Tower and deal with this rogue AI in return for a potential Guardian Orb that lays in storage there still stands, even after the events on Kashoria, here in Hastoki Tower, and with the possible upcoming Starfinder elections. The crew leave for the Lawspire complex, home of the Starfinders, with a new unlikely ally in Rena Constantine. Their job, however, is not yet done, but for now, have a moment to take a breather.